introduction, Ed. And thank you for inviting me to speak here. So, the UN has predicted that we need 70% more food by 2050. That's 70% more food. How are we going to achieve this when only 10% of the Earth's surface is suitable for agriculture, and we use a third of that to grow livestock feed? Add to that the fact that we need, the average age of a farmer is 60 years old. We have a problem. We need to think differently about the future of food production. And at Growing Underground, we believe in building farms that shorten the distribution cycle of fresh produce to being one of many solutions to achieving this. Growing Underground is an urban farm situated 33 meters under the streets of Clapham in a World War II air raid shelter. We use hydroponics and LEDs to produce microgreens, which are tiny herbs packed full of flavor. We pack these on site and we ship them into New Covent Garden Market, which is the London's central wholesale food market. And from there, our food is distributed over the capital to hotels, restaurants, and retailers. We power the site entirely by renewable energy, and we're working towards carbon neutrality, a low-carbon economy, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now, just to put this in context, you can't see the full plan of that, I don't know why. But basically, if I go forward, this is probably a bit clearer. So it's a deep-level shelter. It's 2 tunnels that are half a kilometer in length. It's about 6,000 square meters, which is about 65,000 square feet. The northern line is 4 stories above, so the trains go above us. There's a mezzanine floor going through this round tunnel, and we use the top level for growing food for the farm, and then the lower level for water tanks, pumps, utilities, that sort of thing. The tunnels were built between 1940 and 1942, and they're a family of 7, stretching from Belsize Park in the north of London all the way through to Clapham South in the southwest. They were each designed to house about 8,000 people during the war. And they had this amazing foresight when they were building these that to have a plan for a use for them after the war, should they win the war. And the plan was, and the reason they built them these 2 long linear tunnels was to, they planned to build an express northern line after the war, and that never happened. They didn't have the money, so it didn't go ahead. TfL, who's the transport network, inherited in the 1990s, and some of them were used for paper and document storage. One of them apparently houses the original Beatles 4-track recordings in a hermetically sealed box. So I want to talk a little bit about the environmental benefits of growing in this environment. We use a hydroponic system which is very water efficient. It uses 70% less water than conventional agriculture methods. And it's a closed-loop system, so anything we put into that system, any nutrients, fertilizers, stay within that system. With conventional agriculture, that can seep through and can cause harm to the local habitat. All of our waste, which is predominantly our substrate, so we grow very similar to the experiment you did at school where you had absorbent paper and cress seeds on the top. It's a recycled carpet that we use, which is very absorbent, and then we scatter sow seeds on the top. When we harvest that, there's very little we can do with the waste, so we send that into southeast London to a waste to energy CHP conversion, which is, produces electricity, and we use that to offset our carbon footprint. We are working towards carbon neutrality. Anything we purchase for the farm, any supplies, any products, we have a carbon embedded in that. We tally that up, and at the end of the year, we produce a set of accounts similar to our financial accounts. We're looking to offset that with various reforestation projects in the UK to start with, and maybe further afield. We power the site entirely by renewable energy. We use good energy, which uses off-site wind, solar, and hydro. And we take this across the grid, but anything that we take out or the customers take out, they make sure they've got the infrastructure in place to provide for that. It's really important for us to reduce our impact on climate change, but Irregardless of climate change, the slipstream benefits of a low-carbon economy are attractive in their own right. It's much cleaner, it's much quieter, and it's much safer. But most of all, it's much more efficient. But the main reason we set up Growing Underground was to produce hyperlocal food, supplying the city from within the city, reducing food miles, reducing distribution models, pollution, and food waste within the city, and also adding some security to food as well. Growing in the environment in a tunnel is actually a very efficient way of growing. We have a year-round temperature of about 13 to 15 degrees, and the micros require about between 20 and 25 degrees. So as well as giving off light, our LEDs give off heat. And with the ventilation at both ends of the tunnel and some movement of air within the tunnel, we can produce the optimum temperature, humidity, CO2, and airflow, enabling us to grow in the optimum conditions year-round. We don't use any pesticides on our products. I want to talk a little about the business. It was established in 2012. This is me and my business partner in the early days setting up the first 1 meter by 1 meter hydroponic unit. We borrowed a few lights from our potential LED supplier. And our first harvest was here. We proved that it worked. And we spent a lot of this early part of the business negotiating with TfL, who are the transport network in London, to take the site and take a long lease. We also spent a lot of time working with the local council, which is Lambeth, who have been very helpful to achieve an agricultural exemption for growing in this environment. We have a tax or business rates in the UK, and I'm not sure how it works over here, but for 65,000 square feet, it would have been extremely expensive. So luckily, we managed to achieve that. After we proved that model and it worked, we harvested the products. We sent them off for testing just in case there was anything dangerous in that environment, heavy metals in that environment, and everything was okay. So we moved to phase 2. And this was predominantly, this is a proper hydroponic system. It's on one level. And this is me with my business partner. And we started to do seed density trials, and also sort of yield trials, because there's no data out there, not many people had done this before, but the people that were doing it weren't going to hand that information over to us, so we had to work that out for ourselves. We also used the space to attract investment, and in these early days, this was back in 2013, we approached banks and angel investors. The banks weren't lending any money, they still aren't, well, they're not lending it to small startups like us. And angel investors, this was still quite early, and we couldn't convert anyone to back this at that time. So we embarked on a crowdfunding campaign, which ended up raising about £650,000 in its first round, which enabled us to push the business forward. And this was in 2014, and that took up most of that year. 2015, we started to build the farm, design and build the farm. And then 2016, we started to supply food into New Covent Garden Market as a food to the wholesale markets, and starting to build that fresh produce business. 2017, last year, we started to supply into retailers. So we started to supply into Ocado, which is an online retailer, Whole Foods, Planet Organic, small supermarket chains in London, Farm Drop, also another online retailer, and then Marks & Spencer's in September of last year. And this is one of our retail packs that we supply. We are only using about 20% of the actual space, so we've got plenty of space now to grow into, and that's the plan over this next year. Of course, we're not going to resolve world hunger by producing microgreens for high-end retailers, but we do believe this is one small step towards achieving it. In the grand scheme of things, LEDs and controlled environment agriculture are in their infancy. We're going to see exponential growth of technologies, LEDs, efficiencies, light recipes, and hydroponics technology in general. The real game changer comes, though, in the future and the not too distant future, when we have an abundance of cheap renewable energy and we can start to produce the staples like wheat, soy, and maize, and other vegetables. And then we can start to see ourselves and other companies building large vertical farms inside cities, on the outskirts of cities, of major conurbations, and allowing threatened agriculture, land with soil degradation, and other environments such as rainforests to replenish and go back to their natural form. Hopefully, this combination will help us to create that additional 70% food required by 2050. Thank you very much.